If we come to the table with an open mind and I have an idea and you give me some feedback on it, or you might have another idea that's exactly the opposite and I give you some feedback on it, a majority of the time, working as a team, we're going to take a little bit of your idea and a little bit of mine, and it's going to end up being the best one.
Welcome to Principal Office Hours, where we swear there's no detention slip waiting for you. Just real talk from real principals who've survived everything from budget apocalypses. In today's episode, we touch on staff motivation and engagement in schools. And particularly, we cover very specifically, how do we onboard new teachers? What are some of the things that we can do to set that environment of psychological safety with them, to involve them in decisions? And we also do a little bit of a deep dive into curriculum and pacing guides that are out there. And spoiler alert, these are things that may need to change in almost every school. Finally, we touch on very briefly an easy way to be able to keep your staff meetings efficient and have that retention of information a lot better. So stay tuned for that and a lot more in today's episode of the show. Today's guest has been in education since 2002. That's a whole 23 years that he's been going through the ropes on all of the different roles that are available. So he's been a principal, he's been a learning director and a vice principal. He's been basketball coach and athletic director, middle and high school classroom teacher. He's done it all and has so much empathy for what it's like to be in all of these different roles in a school. And it's a great pleasure for me to be introducing to you this today, JJ Albert. He's the principal at Mark Twain Elementary School out here in California. So JJ, welcome to the show.
Thank you, CT. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be on.
So tell us a little bit more about Mark Twain, the students that you serve, and the kind of community that you're in.
So Mark Twain is a 4th and 5th grade elementary school in Central California. It serves low socioeconomic backgrounds. The city is also home to California State Prisons, so there is a lot of movement in and out. My school serves about 430 students. Like I said, 4th and 5th grade, low socioeconomic. Many of the students there have either grown up in Corcoran or there's a lot of movement in and out. So I see them maybe just for 1 year or 2 years and they're out.
Yeah, is that kind of disruptive? Like, especially at that age of elementary school, like they've just come out of 3rd grade, going to 4th and 5th. It's pre-middle school, like middle school's already a tough period for a lot of kids. This is like even more formative for them.
Yeah, and aside from that too, our district is split up into grade level schools. So most schools nowadays are K6 and then middle school 7, 8. And we actually have K1 school 2, 3. I'm at the 4, 5, and then the middle school 6, 7, 8, and then high school is 9 through 12. So that kind of mixes it up a little bit too, even in terms of transitioning kids that are in the district already in 3rd grade coming to 4th grade.
So help me piece together like the thinking around this. It seems quite counterintuitive, but I'm sure there's a good reason behind why the district has been organized in this way. What's the main thinking behind it?
The town that I grew up in, which is actually where I work at, in the district, all of those schools in the past, they were built way back in the 40s and 50s. They were elementary schools, say K through 6, and then Corcoran had junior high, and Corcoran, California, that's where I'm at, had junior high and high school. And then what happens is they decided to not have neighborhood schools anymore. So they split all of those schools up by grade level. And it's been like that ever since. And unless you're from there or went to school, it is a little, I don't want to say the word odd, but it is a little strange as far as the organization is concerned with other districts around, because a lot of them run K6.
Yeah.
And
So I guess what you're saying is most of the kids and the students in Corcoran, this is just their normal. This is what they know, right?
But yeah, I grew up in the same system, and that's what I knew. I was going to go to Bret Hart for kindergarten and 1st grade. And so I grew up with 6 different mascots. So I went from a bear hugger to a cub to an eagle to a wildcat and then a panther. So yeah, it's pretty norm for the students and the families that are from Corcoran and have stuck around. But for those that are coming in from, say, neighboring towns, it's not. They're used to coming in and enrolling their students, and they have elementary age students, and they can go to one school and enroll all three of them. In my district, they have to go to the different, even though the enrollment is the same and online, they'll still be attending, depending on grade level, a different school site.
Got it. And do you feel like that helps the students as well? Because they each student just goes with their cohort through all the different schools that they need to go through. And how does that change your, or how does that affect rather your leadership of the school, knowing that you're only going to have these kids for 2 years?
In terms of leadership, it's really important that we are aligned with the junior high principal and the principal from the prior grade levels, including the kindergarten and the first grade school. It's one thing that our district right now is currently working on because the alignment probably isn't where it should be. And there's a lot more what we would call working in silos. And so our new superintendent has really taken charge and trying to start the initiative of getting everybody to, even in terms of curriculum, because we're still in the process of making sure that just the elementary schools themselves are using the same curriculum. Currently, I'm in my last year of using a different curriculum than what the other two elementary schools are using. So it takes a lot of work and collaboration with the other principals to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's you at the leadership level. And when it gets to staff, like in order to deliver that seamless experience for kids, to ensure that they're well, all their needs are addressed at every school through their journey, you need to have your staff giving their best in school. You know, we were chatting about this before, where so often in teaching, it's one of those professions where truly, I think undervalued is the operating term. A lot of teachers feel undervalued because they work super hard, they go above and beyond, but often this isn't seen because the general public would see, oh, you're working regular school day, you get your summers off, you got tons of spare
Mm.
time compared to everyone else in the workforce. And that just isn't true. I think a lot of teachers and even like admins, especially, also like burn out because you give so much to your school. And at the same time, it's a profession that people get into because it's meaningful. You're making a difference in the lives of so many kids. It's a labor of love almost. But how do you balance this as a leader? Like this whole idea of loving to give your best without burning out. Like, how do you think about that with your staff?
There's a couple things to that just to follow up on some of the comments you made. First and foremost, I would say that it's always good to remember that we're providing a service. So if you want to say we're in the service industry or whatnot, you could say that, but it's a very important service that we're providing. We're working with students are the future of our country and whatnot. But on top of that too, and you're going back to talking about staff members and having them feel comfortable and not having burning out, the main thing I would say is first and foremost, just like with any teacher in the classroom with their students, you need to have, as an administrator, you need to have a rapport with each and every one of your teachers. I'm lucky because my staff is small. I only have 20 teachers, and it's easy for me to gain a rapport with them simply by walking in the classroom, being visible. But there's also a lot more to that starts up at the beginning of the year or when they're newly hired, or even as myself coming in as a new principal, making them feel comfortable with the climate and culture that I want to have at my school, especially the professional relationships that I want to have with my staff.
Yeah. So let's unpack that a little bit, because it sounds like at the foundation of all of this is having that good sense of rapport with your staff, who can then transmit that down to the way that they run their classes, to the way they interact with kids. But what does that mean to you, like rapport? And how do you gauge if you've got good rapport versus not so good rapport?
The way that I gauge whether I have good rapport or not with my staff, just going back to rapport to begin with, is even when I began teaching, I was always taught if I don't have a good rapport and relationship with my students, then they're not going to learn from me and they're not going to be engaged. So I took that idea and as I went through my profession and became principal, I use the same idea with my staff. To me, it's very important that they know that I have an open door policy and they can come to my office at any time. They can ask me anything at any time. And also my response time to them, even if they don't come into my office and they send me an email, that I'm going to get back to them. And I try my best, even if I get an email and they have a certain type of question, to get back to them personally by again, because my I have a small school, by going in and speaking with them personally. But in terms of having rapport with my staff, it starts with let they know first and foremost what the expectations are for the year, and that we are student centered first and foremost. And from there, then also letting them know that, hey, there's certain decisions that are going to have to be made, but we're gonna do it as a team, and they're gonna have input on the decision.
Got it. So it sounds like the foundation of rapport for you is that personal relationship that you have with each teacher that allows for a certain degree of psychological safety with you and also an amount of collaboration in the work that you do together. Would that be
Exactly. Yeah,
okay?
and you have to have that sense of collaboration, and you have to have vulnerability. So, if I'm asking them to try something new in the classroom or we wanna try something new, I'm the first to tell them to try it, and it may not work out, but I wanna be there and I wanna see it so we can provide feedback to each other. And if you're not vulnerable with your teachers and you don't and they're not comfortable with you, then they're not going to grow as a professional. Then that's going to have an impact on the students.
Got it. And so something you said earlier resonated with me. Where many of us are going to be starting the new school year soon or have already started. And there are new teachers coming in, even existing teachers who have been around for a while, they've just had a summer break. There's that need to reestablish that rapport a little bit. Like, how do you approach doing this with your staff?
So the way that I do it, and this, I'm going into my fifth year at this school as principal. So when I'm going into my first year, it was actually the COVID year. So it was very important that I got the message across of how teachers were going to be evaluated. Not only was it going to be new for me because most of it was online, but it was also new for them. But I was also replacing the principal who had been there for close to 20 years. So there were probably certain routines and procedures that obviously they knew were going to change because I was coming in. A new person's going to come in, some of that's going to change. But my main focus was going in and letting them know whatever the goals were that we had set out, and making sure that they were reflected in the evaluation process. But I had to make them feel comfortable with the process. And this starts now that I'm 5 years in. This is how it starts with the new teachers that I hire. I onboard them. There's some days that they come in prior to the rest of the staff, and I onboard them. And onboarding includes everything from, how do I request a sub? What's my phone extension? Where are the bathrooms? All the way from that, and then we work our way all the way to the evaluation process. And it's my job, I believe it's my job to make them feel comfortable in that process. So I walk them through what the evaluation is going to look like. I will also pull some sample evals that I've made to have them to take a look at it. And the main message that I tell them is, when you come into my office for an evaluation, whether it's a post observation, the mid year observation, or the final, you're going to know exactly where you stand prior to coming into that meeting. So there aren't going to be any surprises. You're going to know exactly where you're at or whatnot, not only because of our debriefs, but that's just the way that I need it to be. Because the conversation that happens during that evaluation time, especially during the mid year evaluation, is, what can we do to grow and make yourself better as a professional? What do you need to work on? My phrase that I use all the time is, you're really not going to have a problem in the evaluation process with me unless I go into the room and the kids are throwing pencils into the roof or whatnot, because everything else, there's always room for improvement. And so as long as you're making progress and you have areas of growth and you're making progress within those areas of growth, then we're fine. But if we're going to be stagnant, then there's going to be an issue.
Got it. And how do you structure these like onboarding sessions? Like you do them personally, which is amazing. Do you have a checklist of things, like a set agenda? And how many days does this go through?
So usually when the new teachers arrive at the district, they spend 1 to 2 days at the district office, and they work at the district office in terms of payroll and paycheck and all of those other things that need to be taken care of. And then they're released to us for a half day. I think this last year was 1.5 days. And I have my academic coach come in and my academic technology coach come in, and we put together an agenda and we go through everything that we think they're going to need to know on a day-to-day basis. And then we also talk, and then we work our way through to the evaluation. And I'm blessed because I have two great academic coaches that work with me, and they're very good on not only supplying me with feedback or critique of what I can do better, or what they think needs to be done or be more clear, but they're also good too at giving the new teachers feedback as to what to expect from me. So it's one thing for your principal to tell you, don't worry about the evaluation process. When you come in, we're going to talk about how we can improve certain things and grow as a professional. But it's easy for me to say, but when you hear it from a peer, then that puts a little more weight on it.
Yeah. So you have a day and a half to
Mhm,
go through all of this stuff with your new teachers over and above, like, where's the bathroom? How do I apply for stuff?
mhm.
It's a lot of stuff. Like, how do you guide or something that you work through every year? Or like, how do you stay on top of that?
So I work in conjunction with the academic coaches. We work real closely together, and they are real, especially when I first came in, coming from the high school level as a vice principal, coming to the elementary level as a principal. It was a little challenging to get used to the curriculum and whatnot. So I really relied on them. And then as we moved along throughout the years, basically working as a team, I bounce ideas off of them. They bounce ideas off of me. We call it going down the rabbit hole. Let's go down the rabbit hole. And what if this happens? Or what if we do this? If we do this, what's it going to look like? Or what's the reaction we might get from the staff? So I'm very lucky to have those two coaches along with me to help me in that process, because what I tell them, and I tell my staff this as well, is if we come to the table with an open mind and I have an idea and you give me some feedback on it, or you might have another idea that's exactly the opposite and I give you some feedback on it, a majority of the time, working as a team, we're going to take a little bit of your idea and a little bit of mine, and it's going to end up being the best one. So if we come in with a growth mindset and open minded, the majority of the time, that's what happens. I tell them, don't come in closed minded when you have an idea. Come in with an idea and a solution, or come in with a be solution oriented. So if you come in with a solution and you have an idea and a solution for it, it's a lot better than coming in and having an idea or not having an idea and just asking me. Don't come in
Yeah.
and yeah, don't come in and say you have an idea or you have an issue and not have a certain solution for it, because then you're just going to have to take mine. I'm not it's gonna be a lot better if you come in with a problem or an idea and you have a solution for it and we can work it out together, because then we both end up happy.
That makes sense. And so you have this day and a half with your new teachers, and then they're off into the wild. How do you build that rapport in just the 1.5 days? Or do you feel like there's a bit of a cadence in which you need to continue building that over the next weeks or months that follow?
Yeah, it's obviously needs to continue and I need to be consistent, whether that means popping into the classrooms, which I tell them that I do. But I also rely on my staff as well to do that. when the rest of the staff comes in on that third day, they're very welcoming and helpful to the new teachers. As a matter of fact, when I meet with the new teachers, we tell them in particular, this is the go to person for math. This is the go to person for science. This is the go to person for ELA. So if you have any questions or you have ideas you want to run by it, go to them. They're in the trenches just like you are. And then if something comes up and it's a whole grade level matter or a whole campus wide matter, then it's something that we would bring up in a staff meeting and talk about.
And so you have this orientation process that you go through. And we were talking a little bit about this idea of collaboration as they go through all of that. Like, how do you involve the new teachers in this where they might not feel like they are qualified to be able to give suggestions? Or do you feel like you expect them to contribute and give suggestions?
Yeah, they went to school, they have a degree just like all the members on the staff. And whether you're a teacher that's been there for I have teachers on my staff that were teaching at Mark Twain when I was still in high school in the same town. Whether you're that teacher or you're the new teacher that just came in for the first year, you're going through a new set of teaching or whatnot at the college level. And when you come in, you've got a new set of ideas. The ideas for education, like ebb and flow, and there's always different trends. I could honestly say myself, not being in the classroom, that I'm not 100% up to date on all the trends with strategies and whatnot, simply because I'm not in the classroom. So you have to let the older teachers understand that this is what the new teachers are bringing to the table. And just because they don't have the experience in the classroom, maybe with management or whatnot, that they might have some great ideas and some great strategies or whatnot, but they may not be able to carry them out because they don't have the classroom experience. And that's where the veteran teachers would come into play. And then the veteran teachers, of course, showing the younger teachers the quote unquote tricks of the trade.
Yeah. One of those things that we were discussing before was this idea of pacing guides
Yeah.
that we typically look at for the entire year. And I think one of the tricks of the trade is that these pacing guides just don't work or they're unrealistically designed. Like, how do you think about that and go through it? Walk me through that process of how you brought the teachers and their input
Yeah.
into this adjustment of the pacing guide.
It's ironic that you brought that up because my wife is a sixth grade teacher and she's on her summer break. And we were just speaking this morning and she just received the pacing calendar for the year for ELA and math. And I just snickered and shook my head. But the whole pacing guide idea goes back to even when I was a teacher at the high school level and I taught all the history, world history and US history, econ government. But one of the things that always had to be done at the end of the year, or it was due right when you got there at the beginning of the year, was the pacing guide. And of course, the pacing guide is the quote unquote map for the year of how you're going to teach. I honestly, if you were to look at pacing guides, a lot of them are just copy and pasted from the year before, and they're just changed the dates with the school calendar. I always found that funny, and I thought if I ever get into administration, that's going to be one of the first things that I'm going to tackle. And so when I got to the elementary school, they handed in the pacing guides, and I basically sat down with the coaches and let them know that I wanted to do away with the pacing guides. And my reason being, if you don't mind me continuing, is the pacing guide is based on 180 days for our school district. And so if you look at a pacing calendar, a lot of times, sometimes they'll have the couple days for classroom routines and procedures, and or if you're at high school, go over the syllabus or and this and that, go through the student handbook. But I've found that the pacing guide is always thrown off from day one. If you sit down and think about it, you don't really have 180 days of teaching curriculum. There's certain days in there that you need to take off. You got to guess the certain amount of days that you're going to do routines and procedures. You don't know how fast you're going to go through that or how quickly the students are going to adapt and soak that in. So you're off by a few days already. Another thing that's not taken into account is the reteaching days after you give an assessment. Most pacing guides do not include the reteaching days for assessment, and you don't know how long that's going to take either. If you're a high school teacher and you're teaching 3 classes of world history, that could look different for each of those 3 classes depending on the characteristic of each of those period classes. You don't take into effect the we have a rally today or we have perfect attendance assembly. What about the last day of school, the day before you leave for Thanksgiving, the day before you leave for Christmas break? At the elementary school, Halloween, if it falls during the week or the day after Halloween, that's always a crazy day. So really what you're looking at is you're not looking at a 180-day pacing calendar. When you if you really sit down and look at it, it really comes out to anywhere between 150 to 165 days of where you should be giving instruction. So
So,
I go ahead.
yeah, so, this is mind blowing because what you're saying is that as a standard, we are overestimating the amount of instructional time by almost 10 or more percent from these pacing guides. And we're now saying, or every teacher is getting these thinking, oh my gosh, I've got to cover all of this in the time I have, but I only have 90% of the capacity of what I'm supposed to be covering. Do
Mhm.
you think this is a source of stress and burnout? I mean, we're talking about burnout.
I honestly I think it is because in the days when we were using pacing calendars, oh my, look at this. We're already in November and I'm still back to the beginning of October and we have Thanksgiving break coming up and then we've got finals and 3 weeks of Christmas break. So to me it puts a little pressure or makes the teachers feel uncomfortable and like they're behind when they're looking at a pacing calendar in that way. And even if you had a perfect pacing calendar for the year, it's still not going to work out because it should be a working document and it should be able to be adjusted. I didn't even talk about what about the days we have lockdown, fire drills, those things are always bound to happen through you have to do them legally, but then there's also the days where the cafeteria ladies were running the lunch line was running late today because they had a snafu in the cafeteria or whatnot. So what I did was we work in we still have pacing guides, but the pacing guides are for ELA and math, and they are in 4 to 6 week cycles. And every staff meeting, we take a look at the pacing guide to ensure that everybody on grade level is within a certain range of each other. The students aren't robots, so the teachers and the grade level teachers, they shouldn't necessarily all be on the same page every day.
Yeah. So you've got the curriculum anyway is 180 days. You're reviewing the pacing every 4 to 6 weeks,
Yeah.
but it doesn't change the need to cover this curriculum over the 180 days that you have. Like, how do you calibrate this in a way that actually allows, I guess, a more realistic coverage of the total curriculum that you need to?
Yeah. One thing that I noticed after being the principal there for a couple of years was the whole fidelity to the curriculum thing. And we had some teachers who were doing their own thing. They were making their own assessments, other things like that. And we noticed that we had a lot of skewed data. We had classrooms who students who were overachievers doing very well on these assessments, but then when it came down to take benchmarks or the state test, they weren't meeting that standard that they were showing. So what I did is I sat down with the coaches over the summer and we decided that there wasn't any fidelity to the curriculum and we needed to tighten things up a little bit. So what we did is we took the ELA and the math standards and we found the essential standards. And so we took all of the essential standards and we ordered them and then figured out how we were going to teach it throughout the year. And then we broke it down into cycles, whether they were 4 week or 6 week cycles, they were broken down. The other thing we did too, I'm not going to say we because it was my academic coaches. They put together lesson plans for ELA and math for all of the units. So this last year, when the teachers came in at the beginning of the year, all of the lesson plans were already done, and it stuck to the curriculum, and that's what they were to follow. And if they needed, say they needed strategies for ELD, it was on the lesson plan where to find it in the teacher's edition if you needed that. One of the conversations that the coaches and I had prior to this was, what was the reaction going to be from the staff? Again, we went down the rabbit hole, and I said, we may get a lot of kickback from this because they're going to say that we're taking away their autonomy or their freedom to teach. We're telling them what to teach. On the coach's end was like, actually, we're not. We're just telling them this is the essential standard. This is what you need to use within the curriculum to teach it, because we're using the assessments from the curriculum. So if you're going to go out and pull resources that aren't as rigorous of what we have in the curriculum, we're going to run into a little bit of an issue. So what ended up happening, staff showed up, we talked about it, we introduced it, and it actually turned out very well because they don't have to turn in weekly lesson plans. I already have them. So we switched the focus from, instead of what do I need to teach, to here you go. Here's the essential standards. You don't have to go looking for them. This is what needs to be taught. This is what the students should be are expected to know at the end of the unit. So now let's work on delivery and strategies. So the whole
Yes.
focus changed in our staff meetings from what are we doing to how are we going to do it.
And it takes a lot of stress off the staff as well, because we were just talking about how do we allow the staff to do what they do best at work, which is they want to be there, they want to be delivering instruction to the kids, they want to be helping their kids to grow. And we talked about setting those expectations up front, giving them the conditions and the psychological safety that they need to be able to deliver instruction in an environment and a culture and climate that they're
Mhm,
comfortable with, and the degree of rapport that they have with you and
mhm,
the other staff. And then we started talking about how do we do that without them burning out. And one of the common causes of burnout are, number one, just that over expectations in curriculum delivery through the pacing guides.
yeah.
And then number two is having to come up with their own lesson plans, because that in itself can be quite stressful. And now you're saying, we take that off your plate. We've done it for you. Now we can talk about how do we deliver this in optimal way to get student learning and retention. On that same point about how do you remove things from the teacher's plates that just get in the way and are maybe a little bit outside what they are signed up for the job for. One of them was meetings. And we actually just spoke a lot about meetings. But at the same time, like, you have a philosophy around meetings and getting the staff involved in meetings that I like to hear about. Like, how do you think about these staff meetings?
When I first became principal at the school, we had what I would call your typical staff meeting, which was a lot of, you sit down and I'll stand up and talk, and we're supposed to be here till 4. So I'm going to fill the time till 4 o'clock. When I was a teacher, I didn't really particularly like that as well. So we had some conversation about it. And once we pivoted away from the whole pacing guide thing, and we had everything narrowed down to, here's what you have to teach and here's what the students have to know. So let's focus on how we're going to do it and how we're going to deliver it. Our staff meetings changed drastically. And a lot of it had to do, first of all, with me of, okay, how do we use this time efficiently? And the first thing was, why am I doing announcements at the beginning of the meeting, standing up there and giving them the announcements for anywhere from, it could take 10 minutes, it could take 20 minutes. Why am I doing that? How can I cut that down to make the meetings more efficient and make collaboration time, give them more collaboration time? So what I did is, instead of doing announcements at every meeting, we all meet in one room. The announcements are handed out to them in a document. It's got important dates. We have a fire drill Wednesday, school pictures Friday from this time to this time. I'm not on campus these days, and here's to reach out to you. All stuff that if I sit and talk to them in front of them, that I'm gonna have to revisit anyways because they're gonna forget and they're gonna ask me. I'm gonna get an email. So the first thing I did was that I put everything on a document and then it gets handed out to them. I do a check in, I would say an icebreaker or whatnot, just to get a feel for how the staff is doing. But if there weren't really any issues, it's going to take me no longer than 5 minutes. Here's the announcements. Everything's posted on there, important dates. In the morning, you're going to get another email and this document is going to be attached. And what I found is when I'm going through classrooms, that document is sitting on their desk or thumbtacked to the wall. And it actually raised the efficiency not only of the daily running of the school, but also the staff meetings. So we could get right into splitting up by grade level and working on whatever it is we're going to work on.
That's an incredible hack. It sounds like you shave off 10 to 20 minutes per staff meeting. That's a significant savings from your teachers who could then use that time for prep time or even just taking some time off from
Yeah.
school.
And another thing too is, and this goes back to having a rapport with your staff or whatnot, is I have the PD schedule for the year. That PD schedule should be a working document as well. Just like we sit down and look at the 4-week pacing guide or where everybody's at, the PD schedule is a working document as well. So if I know that, hey, this meeting is going to run till 4 o'clock next week, I'm not going to wait till Tuesday, the day before, and tell them. And this is the courtesy that I give them is if we have to stay till the allotted time that I can keep you, I'm going to let you know the week before. They have things to do too. They've got daycare pickup or yoga class to go to or something. So it's just as good for me to plan it out, and it has to be planned out for them as well so they're comfortable with it as well. So there's no surprises in the PD meetings either, or the amount of time that they're going to be kept. And the question I always get is when we split up is, what time can we leave? What time can we leave? And I'm like, well, you can leave when you've got a good handle on what you're going to do and where you're going. And that's that. You're not clocking out or anything. Know what you need to get done. You're a professional. So I'm going to treat you like one. And so I don't like them when they ask me that. What time we're not supposed to leave till 4 o'clock. No, if you're done at 3:45, then you can leave at 3:45.
That's awesome. Now, we spoke about a lot of different strategies on how do you get your staff to love giving their best and be very motivated when they come to work. And at the same time, like not burn out. It sounds like the way that you're approaching it, very mission driven, very objective focused. And if you've completed your objective, you can clock out. That helps a lot with the burnout piece. If you were to share maybe one piece of advice for another admin who's listening to this and thinking, hey, I'd love to try something tomorrow with my team, what would that be for them?
I would say, and of course, it's very cliche to say, is always make sure that you have an open door policy with your staff, whether it's the yard duty supervisor or the teacher who's been there for 45 years. But I would also say, too, that it's very important that staff is included and has a know of what's going on at the school. The thing I tell them is, look, there's certain decisions that have to be made by me as a principal. That's what I get paid for. But when it comes down to things and we have to talk about curriculum or strategies or whatnot, things on the curriculum side or the day to day running of the school or instruction in the classroom, I am not comfortable making any of those decisions without the input of my staff. So if it's something that we're looking at and we want to go a certain way, or we're talking about it at a district level, I want to go get input from the staff and I want to know what they think. Now, the ultimate decision that's made may not be the one that the majority of them may have come up with, but they have the understanding that they were listened to and that they had input. And I realized that being a good listener and keeping an open ear and also being open to receiving feedback from the teachers or critique has allowed them to be more vulnerable in the classroom and trying things that may help to further student success. And it's also helped them grow as professionals, but me as well.
So what I'm hearing is you got to be open and actively listen to your staff and involve them in decisions as much as possible. So there's ownership on the outcomes of the school. And one side benefit that you're mentioning is you yourself then grow as a leader and as a professional from role modeling that openness.
Exactly. You
That's
were able
perfect.
to put it in layman's terms a lot more better than I was.
It comes from being a layman.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, JJ, for your very generous sharing today. We went through a lot of technical detail in some of the things that you're doing, and it's been really helpful. It's great to hear from you today. And for all of you listening, I hope you've picked up one or two tips that you could take away and start using in your schools as well. I'm your host, CT, and I'm signing off from this episode. And that's a wrap on today's Principal Office Hours. Before you rush off to put out the next school emergency, take 2 seconds to subscribe. It's way easier than getting your budget approved. And if you liked what you heard, head over to principalofficehours.com to sign up for weekly updates on the show. Also, the best compliment would be to tell your friends about us, especially the ones who look like they need therapy or a career change. We're going to be back with fresh principal insights and inspiration every week. Until then, keep being the leader that your ID badge says that you are. See you next time.